Okay, so you cannot do like an autoland or something.
No, autoland is not available because both we've got two radio altimeter failures. So we're on one radio altimeter. We've got TCAS failures. We've got all multiple instrument failures.
This is a radio call from Air India after they crossed the entire ocean and made it all the way over to JFK. They had something break on the plane, a bunch of things actually, and they're trying to figure out a way to get on the ground. And the problem is the entire eastern seaboard of the United States is covered in low-hanging morning fog. So they're trying to work out a solution of how to get them on the ground with all these things that are now broken on this aircraft. Here's what happened.
Good morning, Air India 101, final 4 right.
Air India 101 Heavy Kennedy Tower, good morning, you're following an Embraer short final, wind 040 at 4, RVR 3000, runway 4 right, clear to land.
4 right, clear to land, Air India 17. Air India 101 going around runway 4 right.
Air India 101 Heavy, roger, fly runway heading, climb and maintain 2000.
Runway heading 2000, Air India 101.
Air India 101, what's the reason for the missed approach?
If you haven't heard this term RVR before, it means runway visual range. And essentially what that does is it's a more specific way to measure the overall visibility that the pilots are going to see as they get ready to land. The controller reported that it was 3,000 feet, which is a little bit better than a half a mile. You can see here on the approach plate, assuming that everything is working on the runway and they're doing a normal ILS, which stands for Instrument Landing System. It's just a way for us to get onto the ground when there's a lot of low-hanging clouds. Right here it shows 1,800 RVR is the minimum. So when the controller says this,
RVR 3000.
that means, okay, great, we got nothing to worry about. 3,000 is a lot, actually. Half a mile is like a normal approach that you would see if it didn't have the RVR listed. That would be like, okay, cool, no big deal. However, there's something that's wrong because he's doing the go-around, and that is the start of everything starting to break on this aircraft. And here's what happens next.
Was that the reason for the go-around?
We lost the localizer, we lost an minima change. There were a lot of issues involved. So we're trying to sort that out if we can even continue with this approach.
Okay. Do you need some time to work everything out, or are you ready to do the approach?
No, we need some time to work this out.
Oh, okay. Okay. So just fly heading 170 for me, and is 2,000 okay?
170 heading, and yeah, 2,000 is okay for us.
I love how friendly this JFK controller is, because in a lot of these videos you hear them being rude or abrasive, and this guy's like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, whatever you need, which is usually how they are when you really need something. In a normal situation, when you're just supposed to be doing what you're supposed to be doing, they can be a little bit gruff, but that's the people of New York. But when you really need something, you also can rely on people in New York to really take action to get something done. So it's kind of a double-edged sword that I've kind of realized that just goes with the overall culture of the Northeast. So this guy's saying that he's not going to be able to shoot the ILS, but what's more importantly is that he's saying that his localizer is not working.
We lost the localizer.
Then you hear the controller ask him if 2,000 is okay.
Is 2,000 okay?
On these approach plates that we use, you can see here in this section right here, it shows the minimum safe altitude for everything in this area, and the direction that he's going shows 2,000 would be safe. Now I'm guessing the pilot, when the controller said that, probably looked at that to verify, because it's a trust but verify. Pilots and controllers can both make mistakes, so if I'm going somewhere that I'm not familiar with, like JFK I'm pretty familiar with, but let's say I'm going somewhere in India that I'm not that familiar with, and a controller says, okay, just fly this heading while you work out that problem, and he says, is 2,000 okay? I would look at that section of the plate to go, yeah, 2,000 is fine, because I want to know that the direction I'm going to go is not going to be an issue. So it's a trust but verify situation. Now we're going to find out everything that's broken.
Okay, the 101. We had some onboard instrument problem, and because of that, we are not able to conduct the ILS for 04 right as you suggested us. And now we're just looking for the alternates, what best we can do. Do we have any sector visibility where we can come from the other side, not use an ILS and continue on the VNAV and come and land into New York? And we're just wondering if EWR is getting better, perhaps we can go to EWR if the cloud and the ceilings are better.
Okay, well right now the weather that I have is showing indefinite ceiling 200 at Kennedy. RVR is 4,500, so that's gotten a little bit better.
The visibility is fine, but the problem we are facing is with the ceiling, because we can't continue with the ILS with a ceiling of 200, because every time we try to lock on to the localizer, the instrumentation doesn't allow us to do that.
This is a tricky situation because if the weather's bad in JFK, Newark isn't really that far away, and that's one of the biggest problems I have sometimes with a dispatcher. When they give you an alternate, like a backup airport to go to for weather, they go, okay, here's your primary destination, it's going to be JFK, and a backup, just in case things are bad in JFK, we'll send you 5 minutes down the road here to Newark where things are going to be great. Which is usually why when there is a second airport where the weather's also not going to be good, they give you a third backup, which I'm guessing is probably the case with how bad this weather is. Now he's mentioning doing a VNAV approach, but I don't know the capabilities of this aircraft. There's a few different ways you can shoot these types of approaches. Some of them get you kind of low to the ground, just like a localizer would, which he can't do because that's broken. So I think he's trying to figure out a solution to get him low enough to the ground, but right now the visibility in his initial airport and the backup airport in Newark doesn't sound like it's really good, so see what happens.
Okay, so you cannot do like an autoland or something?
No, autoland is not available because both, we've got two radio altimeter failures. So we're on one radio altimeter, we've got TCAS failures, we've got all multiple instrument failures.
So what ceiling do you need?
So we can do like a non-precision approach, you know, anything above like 600 or so.
Okay, I got it. Okay, I understand now. Just fly heading 220, let me find some weather, pull some weather up, and let me find something.
Okay, thanks.
And just before I go away, what was your potential alternate?
Primary alternate was Newark. Secondary alternate is Newark, but both seem to be, you know, in the same sort of situation.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm going to do some research. I'll get back to you in a second.
So remember I said earlier, the ILS, the Instrument Landing System, that's what we normally use. That is the system that we use when we do an auto landing. That's what the controller was asking about, like, can you do an auto landing? The problem is that when you're doing an auto landing in real life, it can be creepy because your plane is going down to the ground and it starts calling out like 50, 40, 30. And especially in a 747, you're so high up in the air that you can't see the ground, but you know you're 20 feet from the ground, or your plane is, which gives you a bit of a weird feeling. You're 20 feet from the ground, you can't see anything. The way you know that you're 20 feet from the ground is this thing called a radio altimeter. Now, my plane has 3, I'm guessing this plane has 3 as well. And with that system, it's basically tracking your distance of how close you are to the ground. It's just a backup redundancy system, but you do need it for the auto land.
No, autoland is not available because both, we've got two radio altimeter failures. So we're on one radio altimeter.
The reason that's important is, as you can see here, it's one of the required pieces of the auto land. Usually we have 3, but as a backup, you can go with 2 and do this type of an auto land here. So even if they're able to start working out the problem of figuring out why this localizer won't grab on the plane to get lined up with the runway, even if they're able to solve that, that's probably not going to then bring back a couple of the radio altimeters. Or maybe it does. I don't know what's broken, but they're getting messages on their screen which are telling them, hey, these are the things that are broken. And from that, they're able to see, okay, we're losing this, we're losing this, we're losing this. And that's how they know what's breaking in their aircraft right now. So the issue that they're going to have is they're at 2,000 feet. Which is a very fuel efficient or fuel inefficient place to be with a large jet like this. Lower to the ground, the air is thicker, you're burning a lot of gas, and they just crossed a long ocean and did a very long flight. So they can't be just hanging out forever. The nice thing is that they have that backup airport. So that means they have the fuel to get from wherever they came from to JFK, to the backup Newark, and then another backup. So they have some extra gas, which gives you a warm, fuzzy feeling. But if the weather's bad and there's all these new things that are broken on your aircraft, it doesn't do you any good if you can't get down to the runway. Now, I found it a bit strange when the controller asked this.
What was your potential alternate?
To me, that's really irrelevant. The alternate and all that stuff is for legality purposes to get you going somewhere. Once you're up in the air and you're on the way, that means nothing. That is where you were planned to go. That means you could legally go there when you left. But as you fly 12 hours or 14 hours or however long it took for them to get to JFK, it's completely irrelevant because a lot of things can change. So what your planned alternate was doesn't really matter. He needs to be looking for airports that have a ceiling of 600 feet or higher and that can take a Boeing 777 to be able to get in there. I think this is a triple. Here's the reason why. It doesn't matter what the forecasted weather was 20 hours ago when the dispatcher planned this all out. It matters what do they have right now. And these are the things that are broken because when they left, they planned on being able to have the capability to do an auto land. And now with losing the localizer, radio altimeters, and all these other things, they're limiting their options of what they can do. I'm not really sure why the controller is asking this. Now my guess is that while the pilots are talking with air traffic control, they're also making a call here. And there they'll have a dispatcher who's going to be their boots on the ground to help them. Now I don't know if it works like this at every airline, but at my airline how it works is if I'm just sitting on the ground at the airport or at the hotel, you've seen me call and talk to my dispatch before on some of the vlogs. The phone will ring, it will ring one person's phone, and that's it. I pick it up, or they pick it up, they figure out who the dispatcher is that's handling my flight, they pass me over to them, and then we get the problem resolved and on we go. However, when we do a satellite call, like a call in flight, every dispatcher at my airline, it rings everybody's phone. Everybody picks up the phone, and they know, hey, this is a plane that's calling in flight. Everybody pick up your phone so we can quickly get this dispatcher on the phone as quickly as possible so we can start resolving the problem. So if all, let's say 10 dispatchers pick up the phone and I go, hey, this is Kellesley, I'm on flight Boeing 123, the dispatcher that's working that flight will go, oh, that's my flight, I got it. Then I can tell them, hey, look, here's the deal. We lost all these broken things, and now the weather's bad here at JFK. This and this and this are broken. We can't get in here. We can't get into Newark. We need the ceiling of 600 feet. Now that dispatcher can A, start working on it while air traffic control guy is working on it. So now you got two people looking for you. Because when you're in the plane, you're just punching things in the computer. You're like one airport at a time. You can guess like, what about this airport? This is close. But they can quickly look at all the airports in the area and find one that has the visibility. So they're going to be able to do that, one. And two, how it is again in my airline and most airlines, there's maintenance really close by. A maintenance supervisor, maintenance coordinator, that they can message like, hey, get over here quickly. By getting that maintenance guy over there, you now have brought another person into your team. So you got a maintenance guy who's going to be able to talk to you about what's broken and maybe help you figure out a way to fix that thing so you can get on the ground. You got a dispatcher who's looking for airports that you can get into. You got air traffic control that's looking for airports for you to get into. You got to be doing all that while you're flying the plane, while you're talking to air traffic control, while you're monitoring your fuel. So you can see the workload starts building up. But if you start engaging people on your team to start helping you out, it's not you doing everything. That's one of the keys here that this pilot seems to be doing a really good job on. I don't know that he's called dispatch. My guess is that he's called dispatch, but he's really he should be bringing people in to help him out. So watch what plan they come up with.
Aaron, do you want to Heavy? I'm having trouble finding anything that's really that good. I have Albany is 600 feet overcast, and Boston, Logan would be 500 overcast. Washington, Dulles is at 200 feet also.
Any idea on the trends as far as this goes, or it's been definite like you said earlier?
It's been cloudy with this marine layer for most of the morning, I believe.
We were just checking Boston as well, because we're getting a little low on the fuel as well, so we need to decide quick. And we're burning quite a lot in the sun.
Get higher, we can burn a little less fuel, and then I believe Pittsburgh is 2,500.
It's really incredible that you, as a passenger, could be sitting in the back just like, okay, I just want to get on the ground, and not know that all this is going on and how many people are working trying to coordinate all this stuff. And, you know, your plane's just, you know, doing your little oval tracks as you're sitting there like, oh, now I'm going to be late for my connection. Meanwhile, all this is going on and you have no idea. The amount of people that get involved when you really need a lot of help as a pilot, it's incredible. So what the controller's basically saying is all the airports along the East Coast, Boston, Washington, D.C., Newark, all of them are really bad. And that's why the pilot starts asking, what's the trend? Like, what's the direction? Are things going better or are things getting worse? Because it's a marine layer, which usually, as the day goes on, it heats up and starts to burn off and increases the visibility. So that's why he asks this.
Any idea on the trends as far as this goes, or it's been definite like you said earlier?
He wants to know, the pilot wants to know if things are improving and should he hang out there. Because it's not like he can just go like, all right, cool, I'll just cruise out to Pittsburgh, because in Pittsburgh, there's just Pittsburgh. There's not like a bunch of other airports nearby. Whereas from JFK, he's close to Philadelphia. He's close to Boston. He's kind of close to DC. He's close to Newark. He's got a lot of options. So you could have a patch open up somewhere and you're a quick flight away. You go out to Pittsburgh, one, you're going to burn a lot of fuel to get out there. And he may not have the fuel to get there safely and maybe trying to land on fumes, which would be like the last ditch effort. But the other problem is that if he gets out there and there is any type of an issue, he's stuck. There's nowhere else to go. Or if he hangs out in JFK, if he thinks that things are going to improve there in JFK, or maybe in Newark, or maybe they get better in Philly, he can quickly get in there and he's only a few minutes away and he's going to get priority handling.
Aaron, DO102 Heavy heading 090, climb maintain 5,000.
090, climb maintain 5,000, 101.
And Air India 101 Heavy, also Windsor Lock Bradley, Kilo Bravo Delta Lima is 500 overcast.
Roger, Bradley, 500, Air India 101.
Air India 101 Heavy, when you have time, can you give me the fuel remaining in minutes?
Yeah, we'll just get back to you.
Okay.
You see how they're getting him higher up in the air, 5,000 feet? I don't know if that's a rob Peter to pay Paul situation because I'm not an engineer, but what I mean by that is they're going to burn extra fuel getting up. How much time do they spend up there? Does it make it worth it to go up? It kind of depends on how long they're going to be up in the air. Like in that fighter jet, it made more sense for them to get up because they can get that little fighter jet up to 10,000 super quick. On one of these planes, you're going to spend some gas to get up. You're going to have a better fuel burn up there, but is it worth it? Is it worth it to go up a few thousand feet? Maybe. I don't know. It depends on how long you're going to be out there. So it's kind of a rob Peter to pay Paul situation. The other thing you got to realize is he's on a 090 heading, which means he's headed out over the middle of the ocean. He's not even going towards an airport where he can land at. They're just getting him out of the way and up in the air because this airspace is super congested, which in this case is probably fine because they're trying to quickly work out a place that they can go land, and they're not going to keep him out there forever. But if you're flying, you're thinking, okay, my fuel's limited. He didn't give him the fuel amount that he had, which I don't really love, but my fuel is limited, and now we're going further away from an airport. Not a great situation.
Air India 101 Heavy, I think based on the weather that we have in the area and based on the forecast that I'm seeing, I think Bradley, Kilo Bravo Delta Lima will be your best option.
What's the ceiling there?
Okay, right now the ceiling at there is 500 overcast, and then the forecast is calling it for it to get better between now and 1500 Zulu. It should get a little bit better. I think 1,500 feet at 1,500 Zulu, but I'm trying to find Boston also.
The controller's making this recommendation like, I think Bradley's the best because at 15Z, which could be kind of like late morning, things are going to be looking better out there. The problem is they may not have the fuel to hang out until that gets better. If that's their only plan, that's going to just add to the stress level. So to say something, I don't know what time this is happening. We might find out here later, but 15Z could be several hours. They probably don't have several hours of fuel to hang out. So watch this.
Okay, the other thing that we could try over here, because we've got a trend showing it's the ceiling at JSK is also improving a bit. I could try a VNAV approach, a quick VNAV approach over here.
Okay.
And see, it can take us down in a situation like this because we're really, stuck and there's no fuel.
Killing 200. And I'm showing Newark just had a special, and they're showing 400 overcast. They just had a special at 1205 Zulu, so about 6 minutes ago.
Okay, so it's a bit better now in Newark, is that correct?
Yes, sir. The weather came up to 400 feet overcast at Newark.
Then we could possibly try for Newark as well.
Air India 101 Heavy, turn left heading 250. And just advise me your current fuel remaining in minutes.
Definitely 250 will come back to you, Air India 101.
Okay.
Really not loving the fact that he doesn't want to tell him his fuel. If I'm the controller, I'm like, this is the second time I've asked you, and you keep telling me you want to come back to it. It doesn't really matter, really, at the end of the day. He has whatever he has. He can't get more, right? But I'd be thinking, oh man, is this guy not telling me because it's a real problem? It doesn't really matter because he can't get more on there, so they got to get him on the ground. But I think he's trying to figure out, like, what kind of window? Are we working with like a 2-hour window, or are we working on like a 20-minute window? That's what he's trying to get from him. And the fact that the pilot's not telling him, I'm guessing, is because they're busy, focused on what they need to do about finding an airport, getting the weather and the performance for, let's say, Newark, if that's where they're going to go try to shoot and approach and land there. They're trying to get that done, and they're thinking, it's not important what my fuel is, like, get me on the ground. That's what I think is probably happening. So I think the pilot is going to do is he's going to line up on this localizer and actually fly it as an LNAV, so kind of a strange way to do it. The reason it's strange is because they have this type of an approach there at Newark. Now, I don't know if there's something broken on the plane or how old this audio is, but they should have been able to fly this normal approach to be able to get into land, and it would have been completely fine, and it's a backup option to doing a normal ILS approach. And there's a few different options with how low you can go depending on their performance on their aircraft. JFK also has one of these approaches, and they can get them down to 500 feet off the ground. Newark has one that gets them to 600 feet off the ground. And that's just doing the basic, not even the special version of these that gets you a vertical path that gets you really low to the ground that they have today. So I don't know if they didn't have it or the plane wasn't capable for it. I don't really know. But it sounds like the weather's improving in Newark. Not enough to what they need, but again, in an emergency situation, if it's 400 feet, let's say, and you can get your plane pretty close to 400 feet where you can see the ground or see the approach lights and you're dealing with a crisis situation, a Mayday fuel situation, you can start breaking rules. Under normal circumstances, when you hit that minimum altitude, you got to go up and go around. However, when you're in a Mayday fuel situation, you can start breaking rules if it's in the interest of safety for the plane to safely land. Meaning, the deck is 400 and you get to 450 and you can't see the ground, but you're going to run out of fuel if you go back up in the air again. That to me is interest of safety. Hey, look, we don't have a choice. We're going to have to break this rule to get underneath this cloud deck, get another 100 feet underneath so we can see the runway and then go land, right? So you can break rules if in the interest of safety. You got to justify it, and I think running out of fuel sounds like a pretty good justifiable excuse for breaking a rule.
Approach India 101. Can we go to Newark? We'll try there.
India 101, so I just have the Newark person here now. The weather's getting a little bit better. They haven't had a go around for due to the weather.
The problem is with instrumentation problem that we are facing. You're unable to do the ILS. So I was going to try VNAV approach if in Newark, if the ceiling is better than JFK.
Okay, so you want to do the VNAV approach into Newark, is that correct?
That's right. That's the only option that we have because this ILS is unpredictable because every time we turn towards the localizer, it's just gone.
Okay, so your ILS is out of service on both sides of the airplane, right?
That's correct.
And then you said also the radar altimeters are out on both sides of the airplane?
That's right. We are on a single radio altimeter now.
Okay, so you just have the basic altimeter?
Yes.
I have no idea why this controller is trying to diagnose the situation of what this pilot is dealing with, like both sides of the airplane. I don't know which sides he's talking about, but anyways, there's a lot that's broken on this plane, and the pilots, I think, have this plan of doing this VNAV approach on the localizer, which I understand, I think, what he's planning to do, which is, again, he's trying to come up with a solution here. For some reason, he's not wanting to do the RNAV approach in there. But I'm not sure why the controller here in the tower keeps asking him, like, okay, what exactly is wrong here? If I'm this pilot, I'm like, hey, this is a really high workload. Look, just get me over to Newark and I'll get it sorted out. Because this controller isn't going to be able to solve these problems. That's not his job. He's not there to diagnose. I guess he's trying to get as much information as possible because obviously more information you have, the better. But based off of the way he's talking, the questions he's asking, I don't think he understands the systems of an aircraft, nor would I expect a controller to. They're very complex systems. Like, there's a lot of pilots that don't even understand how deep and redundant and all the different backup systems and how they're interconnected. And that's why we have mechanics, because those guys are constantly messing with that stuff and playing with it and know exactly, like, if this breaks and this and this and this will be impacted. We know what's key and essential for what we need to do, but we're also there to fly the plane. So this controller asking the questions is, I don't know, it's kind of, to me, a little bit strange. They're just jamming up the airways, and the pilot's just like, hey, we're kind of busy trying to get over here to Newark and get on the ground.
AFOP, we'd like to try the VNAV approach into Newark.
Okay, so what we will do is we'll clear for the ILS 4 right at Newark, but you're gonna fly it as a VNAV approach.
That's correct. And if I have a better ceiling, at least once I go visual, I can continue my approach.
Yeah, so what he's going to do is he's going to load up an ILS, so that gives his plane a lateral path lined up with the runway. Again, don't know why they're choosing to do it this way, but that's going to give him a lateral path. Then what he's going to do is he's going to engage the lateral path on his aircraft to get him lined up, and then he's going to, I'm guessing, estimate his vertical descent to get him low enough to the ground to be able to break out. So that should put him on a path. That's what I would do. Well, I would do a few different things differently here, but in this situation, if this was his only option, would be line up with the ILS and then do a guesstimate on his vertical descent rate. So you'd start maybe 900,000 feet, depending on their speed. 900,000 feet a minute going down, and that should get you something pretty close to what the ILS path is going to get you, and then you'd be able to break out, be able to see the runway, and go land. I'm guessing that's kind of what they're planning to do here, but let's see what happens.
Aaron, do you want to Okay, so you're on vectors now, heading 270 vectors to Newark. He'll do ILS approach to runway 4 right, and you're going to fly it in VNAV mode, correct?
That's affirmed, sir. Thank you very much. Heading 270 Air India 101.
Air India 101. Other than both ILSs, both radar altimeters, what other things have failed on the airplane?
Basically, here we've got single source radio altimeter. We've got TCAS failure, no auto land, wind shear system, auto speed brake, and APU is unserviceable as well.
I mean, so essentially, like, what we got working right now is we got 2 engines going. The ovens work. They brought me snacks mid-flight. That's pretty much what we got, and we're trying to get this plane on the ground because everything else is broken. That's kind of essentially what he's saying. And that's what goes back to how important maintenance is and how important mechanics are. And I always try to be as appreciative as possible when they fix my aircraft, because they are so key. If you leave and there's a bunch of things that are broken on your plane and you go flying somewhere, well, it's possible that on that 12, 13, 14-hour journey, more things break, which is why I like to leave with nothing broken on my plane, because if en route 1 or 2 things break, that's like, okay, 1 or 2 things that I have some limitations. But if I leave with what sounds like he left with, a bunch of things that are broken, and then new things break, then it starts giving you very limited options like this, which is going to be very stressful, which is not how I like to fly.
Okay, I didn't understand that one, the last one. So TCAS failed, no auto brakes, and, stand by 1 second. Okay, Air India 101. So just when you get a chance, give me the people on board and the fuel on board, please.
We have total of 370 and fuel 7,200 kgs Air India 101.
Okay, now I have some friends that have flown the triple, and 7 tons isn't really a bad number. It's not like, we're in a Mayday situation. No, it's not a comfortable number, but it's enough to be able to safely go over there. So my guess is that earlier when they kept asking him, he wasn't saying anything, not because he had put himself in a bad situation with the fuel, but more because he was like, that's not important, like, let me solve this problem of finding an airport. So that would be my guess of why he never replied to him. I was thinking maybe it's because he's nervous. Doesn't want to tell him that I got like 10 minutes of fuel. But it sounds like he had plenty of fuel to safely get to where he needs to go. But he's got 370 people on the plane, I guess 369, not including him, but that they all want to get on the ground safely. So it's not a lot of time, but it's enough time to safely get over and land in Newark. All those airports are close together.
Air India 101 Heavy, I'll give you the latest special weather, 1120 Zulu at Newark. Wind 360 at 8, visibility 2, mist, few clouds at 200, ceilings at 400, overcast, temperature 17, dew point 17 at Kennedy, altimeter 3012. Air India 101, is there anything else that you need from me?
We are good, sir. Thank you for the support, and thank you very much.
No, you're welcome. I wish there was more I could do for you.
Thanks.
Air India 101 Heavy, contact New York Approach 127.3.
173, good, sir. Thank you very much.
Porter 121, turn right over 220, vector resequence for an emergency.
Right, 220, Porter 121.
Air India 101 Heavy, turn right heading 320.
Heading 320, Air India 101. And Air India 101, confirm clear for the approach.
Air India 101 Heavy, 210 miles from Dillon, turn right heading 010, maintain 3000 until established from localizer, cleared ILS runway 4 right approach.
Sir, right heading 010 and 3000 until established localizer, clear for the approach, Air India 101.
It sounds like this guy in Newark didn't get the message of their VNAV plan that they worked out for 20 minutes over there in the New York Center, but it doesn't really matter. At this point, you're just thinking, like, let me get on the ground. Now, you heard the air traffic controller push that other Porter plane out of the way.
Porter 121, turn right over 220, vector resequence for an emergency.
That plane was basically like, get out of the way so that way we can get this other traffic in here, which is a priority, which isn't a big deal. It happens all the time when you have a minimum fuel situation. I've had that where we were low on fuel because we just crossed the ocean and we had a greater fuel burn than we'd estimated. And when we checked in, we got, hey, we're minimum fuel. And we got a straight shot straight to the runway, and other people got slowed up and pushed a little bit further out, which as a pilot, you don't really care. You're like, cool, man, do your thing, get in there. However, you heard him here report on this special that it was 400 overcast.
Air India 101 Heavy, I'll give you the latest special weather, 1120 Zulu at Newark. Few clouds at 200, ceilings at 400, overcast.
When the weather's bad, they do these special updates, which I love. I love that feature because it's telling you, hey, instead of every hour, we might give it to you every 10 minutes. If things are changing quickly, I like to know, especially in this situation, like, what am I getting myself into? 400 overcast, the problem is that On a normal non-precision approach, that's not going to get you low enough to the ground. And obviously he didn't tell him his plan of how he's going to get down there, so we're about to see. There's a few different methods that they could use to get down to the 600 feet. There's a constant angle descent, which is kind of the thing they're teaching now, and then there's the way that I got taught when you went through flight school, which is the dive and drive method. Now they want you to fly this predicted approach like this, but the way I got taught and the way some airlines do it was they'll say, cross this fix, drop down as quickly as you can down to 600 feet, and then go straight until you hit the missed approach point, and then at that point, if you can't see the runway, you're gonna have to go around. Both are safe. If you want my opinion, the constant angle descent is probably safer because you're up higher longer, but both are safe, and we're going to figure out which one they did here in just a second.
Air India 101 Heavy, contact Newark Tower 118.3.
18.3. Good morning, Air India 101 ILS 4 right.
101 Heavy, Newark Tower, good morning, 10205, only 4 right, clear to land.
4 right, clear to land, Air India 101.
Air India 101 Heavy, emergency personnel will be standing by.
Thank you, Air India 101.
101, go out to the alert, check out to the moving altimeter 0, pressure 3012.
I mean, 3012, Air India 101.
Yeah, I'm guessing they took the dive and drive method, but it doesn't really matter. You're protected in both. They're safe. What they probably did is they crossed due in here at 1,700 feet. They dove down to 600 feet, and then that set off an alert for air traffic control because they're below what should be the flight path. Now, what I don't know, I will never know, is the cloud deck was 400 feet. So they still had to go down a few hundred feet more probably to break out. So they either saw a pocket and they were able to drop in there, or they got close to that point and then they kept descending a little bit lower because they didn't really have any other choice, which I can respect that decision. At the end of the day, you as the pilot in command have the ultimate authority to safely get the plane on the ground, which is what they did. Once they landed, it was reported that they actually pulled off into an area because they didn't have a parking spot, obviously, for them over there. They weren't planning on that plane being there. But everybody was able to safely get off the plane pretty close to where they were hoping to go. I mean, if you cross the whole world, you missed it by a couple of miles, it's not really a big deal in the grand scheme of everything, even if you missed your connection. But they were able to safely get there on the ground. And what's crazy to me is that after flying a plane, which sounds like it left with a bunch of broken things, had more broken things when they got there, had the weather get worse than it was probably planned to be, and all those things going wrong, they were able to pull all the resources that they could muster up together, probably between the dispatcher, maintenance, air traffic control, whatever air traffic control was doing in the background, which we won't know, trying to find airports for them, all that stuff, they were able to fly this pretty broken plane down and safely get on the ground. It blows my mind how safe they're able to make these things, and even when everything seems to be working against you, you can pull a bunch of people together to safely get you on the ground. I don't know, I just find it crazy. I look forward to hearing from you. Until then, keep the blue side up.